Welcome to the Escape and Empower podcast. Escape from the corporate rat race to empowered franchise ownership. Are you ready to take control of your destiny, follow your dreams, and live life on your own terms? Join our hosts, Dave and Pete, for insights on how to break free from the corporate grind, ditch the 9-to-5, and step into empowered franchise ownership.
Good morning and welcome to the Escape and Empower podcast. My name is Dave Greenberg and I am here with my co-host, Pete Gilfillan.
Good morning, Dave.
Bring it on. Give me the energy as you always do.
Pumped up as usual. I'm just excited about today's topic. You and I have done this, and I think it is something that we need to talk to more executives about. This idea of, really kind of going from that corporate job, J-O-B, to being your own CEO, to succeeding as your own business owner, right? Owning your own business.
It goes back to the few things that we've talked about, Pete. It takes time to go through self-assessment. We've talked about transitions. We've talked about ageism as length. But at the end of the day, getting ahead of this and realizing that you already have what it takes to be that first-time franchise owner and how you break free from the corporate grind and start to build a business that fits your life. And entrepreneurship, something you and I have been at for many, many years. And we did that after succeeding in the corporate world. And many people can, think it's daunting. And especially if no one's ever done it in your family or you haven't done it in your circle. But what I'd say to anyone that's out there listening is if you succeeded in the corporate world, you got this, because the skill sets are really something that has built.
Yeah, no question about it. I mean, you don't have to have owned a business before. If you're in the corporate world, you're getting all that experience, right? And that's a big deal, that it translates to taking that experience, those leadership skills, and really investing in the business. And so the idea is that you are bringing skills. So you don't have to have an entrepreneur background, but you do have to have some core things as you are a corporate executive. So let's talk about one of the key things that you have to have.
Yeah, and I think you started into it, Pete, in a good way. Be thinking about the skills and the experience and how they translate. And your skills absolutely translate. And when you sit back and take that assessment, okay, what have you done to get to the C-suite, get to the corporate executive, get to the management, get through the military, whatever you've done, you've developed people and you've managed teams, right? You're going to do that in a business. You've handled budgets, you've set goals, and all those things translate into running your own business. And that's why we love kind of working with candidates that want to escape and move out of that corporate world. And, when you think of it, the corporate world is a big place. But like I said, there are people in the military, there are people in the government, there are people in nonprofits. Those skills that you've built up over time through your career will tell you that you're not starting from zero, because you have a full toolbox to bring in an experience.
Yeah, no question about it. I mean, think about the teams that we led at Ford, or, setting up your budgets, managing a P&L statement, right? Those are all kind of things that you can take and you plug into a franchise system, and it's just an easier way to do it. So you have the skills, and now it's just leveraging those skills within your own business.
We were talking about point number 2 before, and mentors are magic. We've all had them, and whether you've been a mentor or mentee, and most people that we have talked to have been both. Through the process, Pete, I always talk to my candidates, watch out for the survey of one, because they don't know as much as you do when you're going through the process doing your due diligence. But there are those people that provide mentorship. And the thing how I would tie that into franchising is you're never on an island by yourself. You're going to build a business, you're going to create products, you're going to build the tech stack. You can do that on your own. That's great. It's built. A lot of people can do that. But if you're not looking into building all the stuff and working through a proven operating system and a proven business concept, it's built for mentorship already, because you have franchisees that are trying to do the same thing that you are in the network. And most of them may have already experienced some successes or even some failures. And you have that strong ingrained mentoring culture, because everyone wants everyone to succeed. Even the franchisor, they're there to support you. and help you move forward and grow as a business owner.
You and I in the corporate world, we had mentors, right? And career mentors at Ford. And it's not any different. When you join a franchise, it's kind of magnified, right? Now you have the franchisor that's behind you, kind of mentoring you. You have that whole network of all the other franchisees, right? So I always like to tell the story about the guy that joined a franchise concept, and he joined one of those performance groups. And literally they would have regular calls, they would share ideas, they'd work through problems. And that's the strength of a franchise, is the franchise system, the franchisees. But then there's also, and I'm a huge fan of having outside mentors, other people that are in business owners, or have business acumen. I've always used mentors, especially when I have big decisions, when I'm evaluating a business. I'll lean on my mentors to kind of give them what I'm thinking about, and then they share their feedback. And so with franchising, there's all different types of mentoring, but Cal, it's so powerful.
It is, absolutely. And I know you do a lot with Darren Hardy, and I do a lot with just small networking to make sure, even with franchisees in my local town of Nashville, I network with other multi-unit franchise owners. I know one owns UPS, 7 locations of a UPS store. Another one owns 6 locations of a health and wellness store. And it's just great to talk to them about the things that they're doing to accelerate business. In that regard, thinking about point number 4. You can't put rose-colored glasses on. You have to be prepared for hills and valleys in entrepreneurship because it's part of it. And I always talk about the hills and valleys are things you control, right? You're out of the corporate world. You're not reporting to anyone except for maybe your family, your spouse, or a business partner, or your employees. But you're out there leading the charge. But you have to be prepared for the ups and downs. It's not a steady paycheck. There's variability in business ownership. And, sometimes it can take you by surprise. Are you ever going to eliminate all the surprises? No. Can you mitigate your risk by doing the things we've talked about? Absolutely. So, in the early days, as you build this, there are going to be hills and valleys, wouldn't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? There's always going to be problems. There's always going to be issues. That's life. That's about business, right? And it's working through those things to get to the top of the hill. And so, for example, the marketing, what you're using, it may not work or it may stop working. You got to figure out, okay, what do we do? How do we pivot? How do we adjust? How do we modify? As a business owner, you have to be a problem solver, right? To get to the top of the hill, you may have to solve some problems, right? It isn't 100% going straight up. You're going to have setbacks. An employee might leave, and it might allow you then to upgrade your team. As a business owner, you got to be ready for those peaks and valleys because it's part of the journey.
Pete, you and I have had many corporate jobs in the whirlwind at Ford. And my wife Laurie always talked about, Dave, it's the same thing every time. The first 6 months, you dive in and you're figuring it out and you're making it go. First 3 months. The second 3 months, you're actually making changes and you're starting to dial things in and you're heading the thing in a new direction. And at 6 months, all right, you're starting to fine tune, but you're thinking about how you expand and grow. And I would say, I don't know if you had the same experience in taking on your new jobs, but you're going to see the same thing when you're running a business.
No, I agree with you, right? And the good thing about Ford is they allowed us to move to different positions. And it's not any different when you step into a business. You got to kind of understand, learn it, assess what's going on, figure out how you maximize that business model or maximize that group and get it to the next level, and then continuing to evolve it, right? So not any different when you take over a business, you start that business, you got to really kind of dig in, learn it, figure it out, and then start dialing it up. That's really important that you kind of understand that it is about kind of getting going and figuring it out.
The next point is don't be ashamed of starting small. When you think of most of the corporate transitions, we both had jobs that our candidates have big jobs, whether it's 100 or 1,000 or $1 billion budget or $100 million or $4 million budget. This thing is going to come way down in your thinking. And honestly, it's not that hard. So when you start thinking of starting a business for the first time, we talk to our candidates about, okay, what does growth mean to you? How big is big? Once you figure out what one means, whether it's a territory or location, it's simple math to figure out what you want to grow into. but it means you start with a single location or a single territory. And, you're not going to retire after year one, but you build into it. So starting small is just a great thing to do to, I just talk about workflows and, getting the hiring right and all those things before you start scaling up on your growth plans.
Yeah, build a very strong base, right? Build that base before you go up. And if you get that base right, then you're all set. Now, that doesn't mean, you start out with one. That doesn't mean you're not opening another one in 18 months. But, a lot of people, we don't want to do is go and try to open up 3 locations or develop 3 territories all at the same time, launch them at the same time. So we start small. We start with one. We start getting our feet wet, building that foundation, hiring the right people, understanding, learning the systems. And then once we get that base, now we have a lot stronger platform to continue then to scale or grow.
Right. The next point, Pete, I'm giggling a little bit because you came up in a conversation last week. My candidate lived in Seattle. He bought the entire market for Everlines Coatings. We had John Evans in. And wonderful guy. And he just finished training and he was getting these crews out to start doing the first jobs. And he was talking about his family support. And I was referencing, have you given your kids business cards and job titles? He says, no, that's a really cool idea. Well, I got that from Pete. So my point is, and it was wonderful because it helped me talk about family support, which of course we talk about in the process of due diligence. You have to have the spouse or partner along, and the engagement of family support can totally be a game changer. I know Shannon and Lori, both of our spouses, have always been super supportive. And they didn't own businesses before, and they just understood and were engaged in the process and supported it. And, they're perfect sounding board.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a team sport, right? Your family is so important. And the idea is you have to include them in the process of at least, starting out selecting the franchise concept, right? So I always kind of say you do it with them opposed to them. And so they're part of the process. But the work then begins once you decide to invest that franchise. Now it's all everybody on deck, right? We are, as a family, part of this business. I grew up in an entrepreneur family, and the idea is that it have to be part of it. And, use the example of my kids. I gave them titles and gave them business cards, but I also used it to teach them about being entrepreneurs and doing things like that. So put my kids to work. They do filing, they do all that kind of stuff. They're very supportive. My wife is great. She does a lot of the stuff so that I can just focus on my business. And so whatever works for you, how you incorporate your family, that is so important because, again, this is a team sport. It's a team, and your family is that team.
The last point that I want to talk about is something that most people think about when they're looking for W-2 jobs or looking for a spouse or looking for where they're going to live. Finding the right fit. Fit is super important because there's all sorts of franchises on the continuum, right? I think there's 4,000 out there. We work with a couple hundred of the A++ ones. But when you think about fit, you really got to focus in on what you want to deploy in terms of your skill set and your balance sheet and what growth means to you. And kind of, Pete, that's what we help candidates do.
Well, I think the big thing is you got to understand what's important to you and what do you want to do with this business, right? And so you and I spend a lot of time learning about the candidate. What's important to them? What do they want to accomplish with the business? And we've got a set process that we do that so that we can go help them find franchises that align with their interest. And then as they go through the process, we're by their side the whole time, kind of helping them through the due diligence process, just teaching them, preparing them, giving them resources. And so the idea is that if you can have somebody by your side, think of us as Sherpas, that's a big deal, right? Or if you have a, for lack of better terms, a wedding planner, somebody by your side that's helping you, or a career coach, anytime you can get somebody that's helping you through a process, that's a huge advantage. And the great thing about what you and I do is we provide this great service of helping people figure out what they're looking for, get them connected to franchise companies, provide all kinds of mentoring and all that kind of stuff as part of the process. It doesn't cost them anything.
So, Pete, if we're kind of thinking back on what we just went through, there's 6 points we talked about which really can help you leverage your success as a first-time franchisee or business owner. And, there's more things to it, but we just focus on a few today. So, don't forget your skills that you've built over time in the corporate world or whatever trade that you have worked in, they're transferable. And we'll think about with you how you deploy the transferable skills that you really want to deploy. And we also talked about finding the mentor, preparing for the ups and downs, and there's nothing wrong with starting small and growing big. And most importantly, as you mentioned, rely on your family's support.
Yeah, you have a wonderful opportunity to take all that experience you gain in the corporate world and take control of your life, to take control of your destiny, to build wealth, to become an empowered franchisee. And so don't sell yourself short. You have the skills that you need. You just have to deploy them in the right way. You have a support of family. And so you want to go at least explore to see if franchising is a potential path. And they can certainly go to the Empowered Franchisee or Hire Yourself websites, schedule some time to talk to us. That's what we're here for. We can get an understanding of what you're looking for and tell you a little bit more about how we can help you find that way to become a CEO of your own business.
Absolutely, Pete. If you're ready to take that leap, budget 15 minutes and book time with us, and we're happy to work you through the process and talk to you about it and see if it makes sense to work together. Well, Pete, thanks for helping us talk about how you transition from the corporate world into being the CEO of your own business and ensuring your success.
Thanks for tuning in to the Escape and Empower podcast. We hope today's discussion has inspired you to consider franchise ownership as a path to living life on your own terms. Start your journey towards financial freedom and flexibility. Connect with Dave at empoweredfranchisee.com or Pete at hireyourself.com. Until next time.